Fox News coverage of the Iran war. It didn't come from the hosts. It didn't come from the president's speech clips. It came from a retired Air Force Brigadier General named Robert Spalding, who said something so honest it almost seemed out of place on television. We may have to go back again. 6 words that tell you more about where this war is headed than the president's entire 19-minute address.
President Trump sending a strong message to countries relying on the Strait of Hormuz for their oil, demanding world leaders step up to help defend it. Matt Finn is live in Dubai with the latest. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Brian, the country we're in, the UAE, says Iran has now launched more than 2,000 drone attacks and 438 cruise missiles at this country since this war began. This country has actually taken more incoming fire from Iran than Israel. We've been hearing the explosions in the sky the past couple days. President Trump has been urging Gulf countries like the UAE to take a stand against Iran and control the Strait of Hormuz.
The United States imports almost no oil through the Hormuz Strait and won't be taking any in the future. We don't need it. We haven't needed it, and we don't need it. The countries of the world that do receive oil through the Hormuz Strait must take care of that passage. They must cherish it. We will be helpful, but they should take the lead in protecting the oil that they so desperately depend on.
And a White House official tells Fox that NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte will meet with the president in Washington next week. That meeting comes as President Trump has been warning he is considering pulling the U.S. out of NATO after Operation Epic Fury is over. A Reuters headline reads about the president. Asked if he was thinking about pulling out of NATO, he said, "Oh, absolutely, without question. Wouldn't you do that if you were me?" And here's the UK Prime Minister weighing in.
Firstly, NATO is the single most effective military alliance the world has ever seen. And it has kept us safe for many decades, and we are fully committed to NATO. Secondly, that whatever the pressure on me and others, whatever the noise, I'm going to act in the British national interest in all the decisions that I make.
And on the ground here in the Middle East, the president says the United States is going to hit all of America's military objectives in Iran, quote, extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Brian.
Thanks so much, Matt. Meanwhile, sirens heard across central Israel as Iran fires a barrage of missiles in the week. Here we are on Passover Seder. It comes as President Trump made this promise to Middle Eastern allies. Listen.
I want to thank our allies in the Middle East, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain. They've been great, and we will not let them get hurt or fail in any way, shape, or form. Because of the actions we have taken, we are on the cusp of ending Iran's sinister threat to America and the world. And I'll tell you, the world is watching.
And take the president's speech last night, and what Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said 2 days ago. He talked about decisive action and this coming to an end. What does that mean? Let's bring in retired Air Force Brigadier General and former White House National Security Council Senior Director Robert Spalding. General, your takeaway about where we're at in this conflict?
I think we're mostly done. That being said, as you get towards the tail end of any conflict, the targets you're trying to take out are hard to find. And so there's going to be a heavy intelligence effort to try to find the pieces that we've missed. And, you know, so it could go on more than the 2 weeks that he's mentioned.
So, General, I see an aircraft carrier come. I see 2,000 at least from the 82nd Airborne and about 5,000 Marines. From your experience, they don't just report for duty and say, I'll figure it out when you get here. What kind of mission are they on?
Well, I mean, they could be in preparation of a recovery operation to get the enriched uranium. You know, it's 60% enriched uranium, which is about a couple of weeks from nuclear weapons grade material, which means that could be a deadly weapon in the hands of a terrorist. So a high priority would be to secure that material, and that may be why they have those troops forward located.
So we got two things: get the strait open and get the uranium out. If we could do both, we could continue to monitor it, or we could try to get in there. They say would be maybe a couple-week operation. We'd have to set up our own perimeter, go in there with heavy equipment, and send people in. There could be radiation exposure. There could be booby traps to go get it out. At the same time, you might have enough, and you tell me, to also have an operation to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Would you do both at the same time? Would you do one and not the other?
No, I think you can do both. I think the challenge, though, that I would say, and the president has articulated this, is nobody's really helped us. And so if we are going to open the Strait of Hormuz, then it ought to be for the U.S. national interests, and I would consider charging a fee to Europe and China and the rest that benefits from that oil flowing through there.
Here's the president on what the facts are about Iran today, thanks to his decision. Watch.
We are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly, very shortly. We are going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong, and the country has been eviscerated and essentially is really no longer a threat. They were the bully of the Middle East, but they're the bully no longer.
General, your thought, are they no longer the bully of the Middle East?
Well, we've certainly taken away their offensive capability, which means that, yeah, they're essentially been neutered. That being said, they can still conduct terrorist activities, and I think we need to continue to push, and that should come in the coming years. We need to continue to push on the regime to break it up, to prevent future terrorist activity. We may have to go back again.
And lastly, Dennis Ross was on with me, served for 5 presidents, Democrats and Republicans. He said from his sources, he thinks if we leave tomorrow, the regime doesn't last 10 months. Because of what's going to be left.
I think that's right. You know, I think they are struggling to control the country. And now you're going to see factions develop. They've already started to develop. Obviously, we've heard, you know, either the administration's talking to somebody or they're not. And that's because there's infighting going on. So I would expect, yeah, you're going to see fracturing. You're going to see the Kurds probably move in, begin to take some of the territory that they want. And Iran's going to be a pretty chaotic place, kind of like Iraq was after Saddam left.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, General Robert Spalding. Thanks for your insight.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
Here's why, and here's what else you should know. The segment's most important factual revelation came from Matt Finn, reporting from Dubai. Since the start of the conflict, UAE air defenses have engaged 438 ballistic missiles, 19 cruise missiles, and 2,012 drones launched from Iran, resulting in 12 deaths and 190 injuries. This is not a footnote. Analysis from Israel's Institute for National Security Studies confirmed that Iran launched 2.5 times more missiles and 20 times more drones at Gulf states than at Israel. The UAE has absorbed 48% of all projectiles fired, while Israel has received just 12.8%. Think about that. A country that did not start this war, did not participate in it, and asked not to be dragged into it, has absorbed nearly half of all Iranian fire. Debris from interceptions has damaged areas around the Burj Al Arab Hotel, Dubai International Airport, Palm Jumeirah, and Abu Dhabi's Khalifa economic zones. Civilians from Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, the Philippines, and dozens of other countries have been killed and wounded. NSS concluded that Iran's strategy is economic punishment, not military victory, hitting the UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain to destroy energy infrastructure, close airports, and create political pressure on U.S. allies. The Fox segment did not explore this implication. Iran is systematically attacking the very countries Trump is now telling to go take the Strait of Hormuz. He's asking nations under daily bombardment to take the lead on a military operation against the country bombing them, without American help. The segment played Keir Starmer's response to Trump's NATO threats. His words were measured but unmistakable. NATO is the single most effective military alliance the world has ever seen. And whatever pressure he faces, he will act in the British national interest. What the segment didn't fully convey is what Starmer is actually doing. The UK is hosting a virtual meeting of 35 countries to discuss reopening the Strait of Hormuz, and British Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper would lead a conference on the issue while military planners worked on potential implementation plans. Starmer maintained that Britain would stay out of the war. "This is not our war, and we're not going to get dragged into it," he said. "But I'm equally clear that when it comes to defense and security and our economic future, we have to have closer ties with Europe." Read that last sentence again. The British Prime Minister is publicly pivoting toward Europe and away from dependence on the United States, in real time, on camera, while an American president threatens to abandon the alliance. That is not a soundbite. That is a tectonic shift in the transatlantic relationship. When Brian Kilmeade asked whether Iran's regime would survive if the U.S. leaves, Spalding agreed it probably wouldn't last 10 months. Then he added the crucial caveat: Iran's going to be a pretty chaotic place, kind of like Iraq was after Saddam left. This comparison should have stopped the entire conversation. The chaos that followed Saddam's removal killed hundreds of thousands of people, spawned ISIS, destabilized the entire region for a generation, and cost the United States trillions of dollars and thousands of American lives. If Iran, a country 4 times Iraq's population, with a far more sophisticated military infrastructure and deeper proxy networks, descends into a similar collapse, the consequences would be exponentially worse. Spalding also predicted that the Kurds will probably move in, begin to take some of the territory that they want, and that factions are already developing within Iran. This is a description of state fragmentation, the breakup of a nation of 88 million into competing armed groups. That is not victory. That is the beginning of a new crisis. Nobody on the panel followed up. Spalding floated an idea that deserves scrutiny. If the U.S. reopens the Strait of Hormuz, it should charge a fee to Europe and China and the rest that benefits from that oil flowing through there. This was presented casually, but think about what it means. The United States would be converting a military operation into a commercial toll service, charging allied nations for access to international waters after launching a war that closed those waters in the first place. Ships already passing through the strait have been required by Iran to make payments in Chinese yuan or cryptocurrency, according to Bloomberg. Now, a retired American general is suggesting the U.S. do essentially the same thing, just from the other side. The Strait of Hormuz is an international waterway under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. Neither Iran nor the United States has the legal right to charge tolls for its use. The fact that this idea is being discussed openly by Iran through legislation and by American military analysts on cable news tells you how fundamentally this war has changed the rules of the global order. This is the story that should dominate every front page, and no one is leading with it. For 5 weeks, the administration told the American public that preventing Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons was the primary reason for this war. Secretary Rubio said, "People are going to have to go and get the enriched uranium." Special forces were deployed. Mission planning was leaked to major newspapers. The entire conversation was built around the idea that this war would physically remove Iran's path to a bomb. Then, in his speech, Trump said the uranium would take months to get near, and that satellite surveillance was sufficient. He separately told Reuters he doesn't care about the enriched uranium. The Irish Times noted the address dismissed the idea of U.S. troops going after the nuclear materials that the Iranians might one day use to produce nuclear capabilities. So the war's central stated justification, Iran can never have nuclear weapons, has been quietly downgraded from physically seize the material to watch it from space and threaten to bomb if they move it. That is deterrence, not denuclearization, and it is functionally identical to the posture that existed before 12,300 targets were struck, and nearly 5,000 people died. General Spalding, to his credit, acknowledged this when he said forces could be in preparation of a recovery operation to get the enriched uranium. But the president's own words suggest that operation isn't coming. Day 33. More than 4,800 people dead across the region. MS Now, the UAE alone has absorbed 438 ballistic missiles, 19 cruise missiles, and 2012 drones. Gulf News gas at 4.06 and climbing. The Strait still closed. The uranium still underground. NATO still in crisis. Iran still launching missiles, including a Passover barrage targeting Israeli children. The president says 2 to 3 more weeks of extremely hard strikes. A retired Navy SEAL predicts years of containment operations with no treaty. A retired Air Force general compares the post-war landscape to Iraq after Saddam. The British Prime Minister is building a European coalition to solve a problem America created. And markets crashed after a speech that was supposed to reassure them. The Associated Press described the address as Trump urging an increasingly skeptical electorate to give him a bit more time. Time for what? That remains the question no one in power has answered. And the question every journalist, every analyst, and every citizen has the right and the duty to keep asking until someone does.